Hey everybody, this is Mike, and this will be a Garuda Extreme Mode guide. Obviously, I'm playing my monk. I wanted to take a video of a monk point of view and give you guys some tips and tricks on the way I think this is best handled, as far as party setup and the strategy that we use. Anyways, tank pulls, Garuda right off the bat. One thing I think everybody kind of, I should say, it's one nice little trick that you can kind of learn is that I always look for the pile of rocks at the very, very far north, and I kind of always use that as a reference point for everything. Here, Garuda at 90%, she disappears and reappears and does her I think it's minstrel streak, and then she drops plumes. Just like hard mode, kill the satin plume first. And then as my monk, I generally I try to find the outlying plumes and go for those, and then just let the rest of my group pick up, anything that's bunched up with AoEs. So I think that's one thing that kind of helps out a little bit. But anyways, so we're back on to Garuda, and again, this is not a very difficult fight. Unless you make it difficult. And there's a couple of things that you can really do to help make things a little bit easier. So she's about to split here. One thing to know that there is a possibility that you'll get additional plume sets, but that's if your DPS isn't low enough. So if that happens, she disappears again. She reappears on the east, and then she'll do another Mistral Shriek. But anyways, I recommend, if you've got melee in your party, to pull Garuda as the off tank down to the south. Actually, it doesn't really matter where you pull her, just as long as she's far away from Saparna, at max distance, so she's not getting the buff. It looks like, it looks like 2 stacks to me. I don't know. So it looks like in this video we were a little bit too close. You want to get that down to 1. The closer they are together, the less amount of damage that you can deal to them. So, again, like I said, it looks like we're at 2 stacks, so they were a little too close. But anyways, the reason for pulling Garuda as the off-tank and having your off-tank hold it is because Garuda doesn't do Wicked Wheel, unlike Saparna. And while Saparna is alive, she gives Garuda the ability to Wicked Wheel as well. And that's the real danger with being a melee in this fight, is if you're anywhere near Garuda while Saparna is up, she can Wicked Wheel, as well as Saparna herself. So again, I think the best way, and the way that we did it, was to I dropped a couple of dots onto Saparna right away, and then I just switched over to Garuda while the ranged players in my group took down Saparna. And that's kind of going to be rinse and repeat for every sisters phase or clones phase or whatever you want to call that. Here, that's Aerial Blast. Aerial Blast deals damage directly proportional to the amount of pillars that are left standing. Again, just like hard mode. So nothing real new there. Here, though, we have the introduction of the Spiny Plume. Spiny Plume is a plume that can't be killed right away. You have to wait to kill it at a certain point. You have to know that when you do finish it off, it explodes and does a pretty decent AoE around it. So you don't want to be in that. It's not gonna, if you're decently geared, it's not gonna one-shot you, but it's gonna be real close. But anyways, the way that you want to handle this is the Spiny Plume actually puts a stacking buff or debuff, I guess. I don't know however you want to say it. But the buff is fine as long as it's only at 2. At 3, if anybody hits 3 stacks, it'll use an ability called Super Cyclone, which will most likely wipe you because it hits really, really hard. But anyways, you blow up the plume. It drops a buff on the ground, and then you just stand inside, and that ups your wind resistance by 1,000 or something. And there, I don't know if you saw, but I didn't get out of the center soon enough, so I took that Feather Rain, unfortunately. But and then here my positioning was not good, and I kind of hung out too long. So I not only dodged a downburst from, I believe it was Saparna, but then I dodged a slipstream from Garuda herself. So my positioning was not very good there. But as you can see, I used the limit break on Saparna, and I prefer to do it that way. I like to get her down ASAP to try to reduce the amount of incoming damage on the tank. It really cuts down on the failure rate of this particular phase, because in my opinion, this is the toughest part of the fight right here, is tornado phase. So again, I drop a couple of dots on Saparna and then let range finish her off while I jump onto Charada with the off tank. And then again, so same way to handle the spiny plume in this phase. You don't want to get anybody at 3 stacks. So sometimes it'll start off. I don't know exactly how spiny chooses its initial target to stick onto, but as long as the tank provokes it, it should be fun. You just provoke it off, and again, don't let anybody get to 3 stacks. Let the spiny blow up, jump inside, get your wind resistance buff, and their aerial blast does almost nothing. And then as far as the rest of this fight, there's really no difference. This is just rinse and repeat. You'll go through this plume phase in the center when you get some decent time to DPS Garuda, and then it'll just rotate back and forth between this phase and the clones. So again, so here one helpful tip or trick about this part of the phase anyway is we always have the off tank grab the spiny plume and just pull it away from everybody else, just so we can use AoEs. It's nothing real new, maybe kind of common sense, but it really helps get through this phase faster. The faster you can get those plumes down, obviously, the faster you can get back to DPS in Garuda. So yeah, again, and one other thing I recommend is if you're playing a melee, don't hang around the plume for too long, because you really want to be moving out of the way as soon as Garuda disappears, because you want to avoid that feather rain. That's just it actually hits pretty hard, and then it stacks or puts a debuff on you that actually will stack. It can be removed, but if you can avoid the damage, obviously that's what I recommend doing. So there you see me I stuck a couple of dots on Saparna again, got a good couple of hits off on her. We didn't have the limit break quite yet, so I didn't end up using it on Saparna, and I just used it here instead on Charada, which I timed out pretty poorly because I hit it and then bam, I get frictioned, which, whatever, not the end of the world. But it was some damage that I could have avoided by just waiting a second, letting the friction come out and then using it after. Then here here's the swap between the spiny plume, our main tank. It actually it stuck to the main tank right away during this phase, and we just let him get to 2 stacks and had the off tank pull. The crummy part about that is, it looked to me like Saparna wasn't quite dead yet, so when they actually moved, or when the off tank moved Charada closer, they got their invulnerability buff stacked up a little bit, so it made this phase a little longer. Not the end of the world, especially if you're using your limit break. The danger would be, if you don't have enough DPS and you're not able to DPS the sisters down enough, because then aerial blast does a ton of extra damage if one of the sisters is up, and will most likely wipe you. So again, I think one thing that I recommend doing that I don't know that a lot of people think about is you have to do a certain amount of DPS to Saparna and Charada. Basically, that's the way that whole phase boils down to, is you have to do the enough DPS to them to get them down before Garuda disappears to do aerial blast. If that doesn't happen, you wipe, basically. So that is the biggest reason why I recommend using the limit breaks on Charada and Saparna, because frankly the rest of the fight is easy. If you can, it's all rinse and repeat. There's nothing new, nothing is handled differently. So if you can, if you're successful in getting your positions down and getting good hate off on the sisters right away, then you're gonna be just fine, and you'll do this without any problems. One thing I do want to recommend here, and I think I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but when the sisters come out, if you're playing a bard, a black mage, or a summoner, always use Quelling Strikes first. And if you're the tank, just chill here in the center. Build up some good enmity on these targets before you move them. I think a lot of times, a good Rage of Halon right here as a paladin, or a good Butcher's Block right off the bat will really solidify aggro right away. Especially, again, if your bards and your casters are using Quelling. Too many times I've seen people just open up with Raging and just pull aggro off of a tank, which brings the mob over to your group, and it's going to usually result in you getting slipstreamed or downbursted, and that's most likely going to wipe you. All it takes is a downburst and a friction, to end your raid. So again, pop the Quelling. This phase is handled almost the same way as the last one. We didn't have the limit break right away for Saparna. And in all honesty, I should have just burned it right here on Charada, because frankly it ended up going to waste, as you'll see. But we basically had her dead already. Normally I would have gone the safe route and just used it on Saparna right there, or frankly I could have used it on Garuda right here too. But I was just worried she was going to disappear and then I'd lose the damage on it or something. But again, didn't matter. She really was basically dead right there. So that's about it. I hope the guide was helpful. Again, I think this is my strongest recommendation would be to do it this way if you've got melee in your party, because it just makes it way easier. Takes all the guesswork out of it and all the risk. But anyways, that's pretty much the end of Garuda. Hopefully the guide was helpful. Like, comment, subscribe, whatever you want to do. And thanks for watching.